Have you ever made a choice so heavy it changed the course of your entire life in a single day? Not for love, not for glory, but for someone you couldn't bear to lose. Emma Prescott didn't dream of marrying a powerful CEO. She didn't wear white or cry happy tears. She signed a contract to save her dying father and became the wife of a man who barely looked her in the eyes. Vincent Hale didn't believe in love. He believed in control, image, and silence. To him, marriage was just another business move. But what happens when a contract built on cold necessity begins to crack and real emotion leaks through? What would you do if your heart betrayed your mind? Would you run or would you stay, even knowing it could break you? This is not a fairy tale. It's a story of second chances, of unspoken pain, and of two broken souls learning how to love when love was never part of the deal. If you've ever loved quietly or lost something too soon, this story might feel like yours. So sit back, take a breath, and let your heart listen. If this story touches you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's begin. Emma Prescott stared at the hospital hallway clock as if willing the hands to move slower. 7:58 p.m. 2 minutes until visiting hours ended. 2 minutes until she would have to leave her father alone in that stark room filled with blinking machines and slow, steady beeps. The doctor's words still echoed in her ears. Emergency triple bypass. The blockage is critical. Surgery must be done within 72 hours. Her heart ached. Her stomach twisted. She'd asked the question anyway. How much? And the answer had come clinical, cold, $120 to $1,000 up front. She had $7,600 in her bank account, just enough to pay rent and groceries for another month. As the fluorescent lights hummed above her, and a nurse wheeled past with a tray of plastic-wrapped medication cups, Emma felt herself unraveling. She had always been calm, in control. That's how people described her. Emma, the steady one, the composed one, the one who took care of everyone else. But in this moment, she couldn't breathe. She turned toward the window, trying to steady herself, eyes brimming. New York's skyline stretched out before her, glittering and indifferent. Life was moving forward. The world was spinning. But her world, her only family, was slipping away by the hour. She wiped her cheeks quickly and forced her legs to move. Her father, John Prescott, was dozing lightly when she stepped into the room. The oxygen mask fogged slightly with every breath. His once strong hands, hands that used to fix bikes, flip pancakes, and carry her through thunderstorms, lay pale and still beside him. He stirred as she sat beside him. He rasped, barely opening his eyes. Did you eat today? Emma smiled through the knot in her throat. I had some coffee. You want anything? Ice chips? Don't fuss, he whispered, then added with a tired grin. You always did worry too much. I learned from the best. They sat quietly for a few moments, her hand resting lightly over his. You'll be okay, she said, mostly to herself. He gave a faint nod and drifted back to sleep. Emma stepped out into the corridor just as her phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. Meeting at 8 a.m. sharp. Boardroom A. Bring monthly projections. Fee. Hale. Of course. Her boss, Vincent Hale, wasn't the type to postpone a meeting for any reason, not even personal tragedy. In the 3 years Emma had worked as his executive assistant at Hale and Stratton, she had never seen him take a sick day, leave early, or show emotion. He was brilliant, exacting, and impossible to please. He was also one of the youngest tech CEOs in the country and known for running his empire like a machine, efficient, cold, precise. Emma sighed and pressed the elevator button. The next morning, she arrived at the 42nd floor, 10 minutes early, just like always. Her dress was pressed. Her hair was pulled back in a neat chignon. No one could see the panic brewing underneath. Vincent Hale was already in the boardroom, flipping through slides on his tablet. His slate gray suit fit him like it had been sculpted onto his frame. The room smelled faintly of cedarwood and espresso. "You're pale," he said flatly, not looking up. Coffee not strong enough. She managed a weak smile. "Rough night?" He glanced at her, then just for a beat. His dark eyes narrowed slightly. "Your work hasn't suffered. That's what matters." They ran through the projections, market reports, and Q3 breakdowns with mechanical precision. He was laser-focused. She was barely holding it together. As the meeting ended, he closed his tablet and said without inflection, "You're not okay." Emma froze. "I'm fine." "No," he said, rising. "You're pretending to be fine." "That's different." She swallowed hard. Vincent walked over to the window, hands in his pockets. "I don't ask personal questions. You know that. But if something is affecting your performance, I need to know." Her chest tightened. She never talked about her private life at work. It was easier to keep things neat, but in that moment, something in her broke. "My father needs heart surgery," she said quietly. "It's urgent. They want payment up front. I don't have it." Silence. Vincent turned around slowly, studying her. How much she almost didn't answer. 120,000. Another silence. Then, softly, "And you have less than 10. He didn't respond immediately, just stood there, expression unreadable. Then he moved to his desk and pulled open a drawer. "I have a proposition," he said, as if he were discussing a merger. Emma blinked. "Excuse me." He set a folder on the table. "I need to be married within 30 days. She stared at him. "My father's will stipulates that I must be married to retain controlling interest in Hale and Stratton. Otherwise, the board can challenge my leadership, and the shares go to my cousin." "Are you serious?" "I'm very serious." He looked at her directly. "You'd be compensated." Emma's mouth went dry. "You want to pay me to marry you? A legal contract, public appearances, private distance, 6 months. When it's over, we part ways. You walk away with full coverage for your father's surgery and a generous settlement." Her brain couldn't keep up. "This is insane. This is business," he said calmly. "You're intelligent, discreet, professional, and you have a reason to agree." She stepped back. "You don't even like me. That's irrelevant. I trust you. That matters more." He handed her a pen. "You have until tomorrow morning." Emma walked out of that building into the morning wind, stunned. Her coat wrapped tightly around her. But it wasn't the cold that made her shiver. It was the choice before her. Dignity or desperation. Principle or her father's life. She had 24 hours. The contract sat on her kitchen table like a loaded gun. Emma Prescott hadn't touched it since she brought it home last night. She'd made herself a pot of black coffee, tried to eat a piece of toast. But her appetite had vanished the moment she read the clause marked marital conduct expectations. No physical intimacy required, no shared financial liability, no affection, unless publicly necessary. It was written like a merger document, cold, rational, perfectly Vincent. She looked over at the couch where her father lay napping under a knitted blanket. The TV was playing some old Western. He always loved those. His chest rose and fell slowly. Each breath was a silent countdown. She reached for the folder again. Her hand trembled. How did her life come to this? At 35. She had worked hard to build a stable life. She wasn't chasing wealth or fame, just security, kindness, and peace. But now she was staring at a legally binding agreement to marry a man who treated feelings like a liability, all because she had no other option. Emma closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "This isn't about me. This is about him. My dad deserves to live." By 7:58 the next morning, she stood outside Vincent Hale's office door. She hadn't slept. She hadn't changed out of her navy slacks and white blouse from the day before. When she walked in, he was, as always, already seated behind his massive desk, a black coffee in hand, 3 screens open. Without a word, she placed the signed contract in front of him. He didn't look surprised, only nodded once. "We'll have the documents notarized this afternoon. You'll move in tonight." Emma blinked. "Tonight, there's a charity event this Friday. You'll need to be seen in public as my wife before the board meets next week." He said it like it was a calendar reminder, not a personal earthquake. She tried to steady her voice. "I need to explain this to my father." Vincent's eyes finally lifted from the paper. "Tell him the truth if you want. Or tell him it's a whirlwind romance. I don't care. But by law, and by public image, you'll be my wife." Emma nodded, throat tight. Later that evening, Emma stood inside Vincent's penthouse apartment, clutching the strap of her tote bag. The space was breathtaking glass walls, steel beams, warm wood floors that glowed under ambient lighting. It overlooked the city like a private observatory. "I've assigned you the guest suite," Vincent said, gesturing down a hall to the right. "You'll find a closet with clothing in your size. Basic essentials. My assistant handled the shopping." Emma stepped inside the suite. It looked like a hotel room in a luxury catalog crisp white linens, a small writing desk, and a walk-in closet that could fit her entire apartment. She turned to him. "This is more than I expected." Vincent didn't smile, but his tone softened. "You'll need to look the part. This world notices everything." As he turned to leave, she found herself asking, "And what about your room?" He paused in the doorway. "On the other side of the penthouse. We'll have complete privacy." Of course. They were married on paper. Nothing more. That night, Emma lay awake in a bed, far too soft for comfort. She stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of silence press down on her. No wedding, no ring, no kiss, no love. And yet, somewhere deep inside, she felt a flicker of something else, shame and sorrow. Not because of what she'd agreed to, but because a part of her had once quietly admired Vincent Hale. Not his money or power, but the way he carried burdens without flinching, the way he built things from nothing, the glimpses of loneliness behind his guarded eyes. Now, she would be part of his life, not as someone he cared for, but as a solution to his problem. She was saving her father. Yes, but she was also giving up something she had always longed for: real love. The next day, a discreet team arrived to walk her through the performance of being Mrs. Hale. They brought new IDs, matching credit cards, custom-fitted dresses, and a social calendar color-coded by influence. Everything was handled. Everything except her heart. Vincent remained distant, though never unkind. He didn't ask about her father again. He didn't inquire how she was adjusting. He simply handed her schedules, corrected her posture, and occasionally complimented her ability to stay calm under pressure. "You're composed," he said one afternoon as she signed documents beside him. "People trust that." She smiled faintly. "That's because they don't see the storm underneath." He looked at her for a moment, longer than usual, but then turned back to his work. Friday came fast. The charity gala was held at the plaza. Emma wore a floor-length emerald green gown, carefully selected by Vincent's stylist. Her hair was swept up, her earrings tasteful, her heels unforgiving. Vincent stood beside her in a black tuxedo, looking every bit the part of a man in control of the universe. They stepped out of the car, arm in arm, as cameras flashed. "Smile," he murmured. She did, or tried, inside the ballroom. Champagne sparkled. Laughter rose and fell. And eyes followed them everywhere. Cecilia Hale, Vincent's mother, spotted them instantly. Emma felt her spine straighten. Cecilia approached like a queen, inspecting her property. "Vincent," she said with a stiff smile. "You look dashing, as always." Then her eyes landed on Emma. "And this must be your wife." There was venom in the word. Emma extended her hand. "Mrs. Hale, it's a pleasure." Cecilia ignored the handshake. "We'll see." Vincent's hand found Emma's lower back. A subtle, possessive gesture. "She's everything I need," he said calmly. Cecilia's lips tightened. "For your sake, I hope that's true." Emma felt the weight of the night settle over her like a veil. But as Vincent guided her through the ballroom, she noticed something. When he looked at her just for a moment, his eyes didn't seem quite so cold. The next morning, Emma stood in front of the mirror in the penthouse guest suite, adjusting a simple pearl earring. The event from the night before still lingered in her bones. Cecilia's ice-cold glare, the tight smiles of strangers, the whispers that floated behind champagne glasses. Who is she? Not his type. Definitely not society bred. She had grown up helping her dad fix his truck with borrowed parts and making boxed mac and cheese for dinner. Now she was expected to blend into the world of black tie events, silent auctions, and curated conversations. No one had said it out loud, but she felt it. She didn't belong. Downstairs. Vincent was already in his office, reviewing a stack of papers. When she entered, he barely glanced up. "You handled last night well." Emma blinked. "That's it? No critique? You didn't trip. You smiled at the right people. And you didn't drink too much champagne. That's more than I can say for most real wives." There was a slight curve to his lips, just enough to hint at something close to amusement. She didn't know whether to be insulted or encouraged. She took the seat across from him, hands folded tightly in her lap. "Your mother hates me. She hates everyone who doesn't attend Harvard charity luncheons and drive German cars. It's not personal." Emma gave a dry laugh. It felt personal. Vincent leaned back in his chair. "She'll come around, or she won't. Doesn't matter. What matters is that the board believes we're a stable, married couple." Emma hesitated. "And what about you? Do you believe this is working?" He was quiet for a moment, then said, "So far, Yes, not exactly a romantic endorsement. The next few days were filled with obligations, luncheons, meetings, interviews. Vincent's calendar became hers. They were photographed together, leaving buildings, entering cars, attending briefings. And though everything was scripted, some moments still surprised her, like the way Vincent placed his hand gently on her back when guiding her through crowds, or the rare times he caught her eye in the middle of a conversation and gave her a slight nod, as if to say, "You're doing fine." But the real test came sooner than expected. "We're hosting the board dinner here on Friday," Vincent said over breakfast, sipping his black coffee while she stared blankly at her granola. "In the penthouse," she asked. "They've asked to see how we live. Consider it due diligence." Emma's stomach twisted. "You mean they want to see if we're actually married?" He nodded. "Precisely." She set her spoon down. "Vincent, I can play my part, but I don't know how to be your wife in your home. I'm still figuring out which drawer the forks are in." His tone softened slightly. "You don't have to pretend to be perfect. Just be calm. Be warm. Let them see we're comfortable together. We're not comfortable together." Vincent looked at her, then really looked. "We will be." Friday evening came too fast. The penthouse was polished to gleaming perfection, candles placed strategically, music set to soft classical. Emma wore a soft navy blue dress with capped sleeves and delicate gold heels. It wasn't flashy, but she felt beautiful, controlled, present. The doorbell chimed. Vincent answered with his usual ease. "Welcome?" He greeted each guest by name, charming and poised. Emma stood beside him, smiling, greeting, nodding politely. The board members, 6 men and 1 woman, all dressed in dark suits and polite skepticism. They eyed her like an exhibit. One of them, Harold Greaves, asked point blank over hors d'oeuvres, "So how did you two meet?" Emma's mind raced. Vincent responded before she could. "At work. She saved my company once during a merger that nearly fell apart. I knew then I couldn't let her go." The group laughed, charmed. Emma forced a smile, but something fluttered in her chest. That wasn't part of the script. Dinner was served catered, of course. Vincent sat at the head of the table, Emma to his right. She was careful to engage with each board member, complimenting their spouses, referencing projects she'd researched in advance. But the turning point came during dessert. "Emma." Harold leaned forward, wine glass in hand. "What's it like living with a man like Vincent? I imagine he works 20 hours a day." Emma paused, caught slightly off guard. She glanced at Vincent, who remained stoic, watching. She answered slowly, "It's surprising. He works hard, yes, but he also listens. He's not always easy to read, but he sees more than he lets on." The room went quiet for a beat too long. Then the woman on the board, Miriam Dalton, smiled. "That was a very diplomatic answer?" Emma smiled. "I have had practice." Vincent gave the slightest nod beside her. "Approval. And something else. Respect." After everyone left, Emma helped the staff clear the dishes. Vincent joined her in the kitchen. Sleeves rolled up. No jacket. No tie. "You impressed them?" he said. She blinked. "I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was just being myself." "Exactly." They stood in silence for a moment. The city lights behind them shimmered like stars. Then, out of nowhere, he asked, "Are you comfortable here?" Emma hesitated. adjusting. He didn't press further, and that more than any compliment meant something to her. Later, as she got ready for bed, she looked at herself in the mirror. Hair loose, bare feet, no makeup. Mrs. Emma Hale, according to the headlines. But to herself, still Emma Prescott. Still searching for a place to belong. And maybe starting to believe she could find it. The penthouse was silent in the early morning light. Emma Prescott moved through the open kitchen barefoot, careful not to wake anyone, though anyone meant exactly one person. Vincent Hale always rose at 5:30. She had learned this not through conversation, but through rhythm. He moved like clockwork. The espresso machine sputtered quietly as she waited for it to finish. There were no footsteps, no voices, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional distant horn from the city below. She sipped her coffee slowly, staring out at the skyline. Even surrounded by marble floors, velvet drapes, and towering windows, she felt strangely hollow. She'd been Mrs. Hale for 3 weeks, on paper, at public events, in headlines, but in reality, her life was still split down the middle like the penthouse itself. His side, her side, his world, her limits. There were no shared meals, no casual conversations, only schedules and appearances. And yet, there were moments, quiet ones, small and almost invisible, like when Vincent passed her a folded napkin during dinner when she accidentally spilled a drop of red wine on her wrist, or the way he paused when she laughed at something someone said, not joining in, but observing, as if surprised by the sound. He never asked how she was sleeping. She never asked what kept him up at night. They shared a home, but not a life. That afternoon, Emma returned from running errands to find fresh flowers on the kitchen counter. Not roses or anything extravagant, just a bouquet of soft yellow tulips. Simple and cheerful. There was no note. She frowned and turned to the housekeeper. "Maria, did you put these out?" Maria shook her head. "They were delivered this morning. Mr. Hale signed for them himself." Emma stared at the flowers. Tulips had been her mother's favorite. That evening, Vincent came home later than usual. He looked exhausted, his jacket draped over his arm, tie slightly askew. "You're late," she said before she could stop herself. He raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Is that concern or curiosity just an observation?" she replied, smoothing her blouse. He walked to the bar cart and poured a glass of bourbon. Emma hesitated before speaking. "The flowers. Thank you." His expression didn't change. "You mentioned once that your mother loved tulips." She blinked. "I did at the gala. You were speaking with Miriam Dalton. I was listening." There was something in the way he said it soft, unsure. Emma swallowed the lump in her throat. "It was kind of you." "I'm not known for kindness," he muttered. "Maybe not loudly," she said gently. He glanced at her. For a moment, the air shifted between them. Then he nodded once and left for his side of the penthouse. Days passed. The arrangement continued scheduled dinners, strategic smiles, formal outings. But behind the facade, Emma noticed more changes. Vincent no longer corrected her posture during public events. He didn't interrupt when she spoke. And once, when she forgot her scarf at a board function, she found it draped neatly over her side of the bed the next morning. They still didn't talk much, but they were beginning to see each other. One evening, Emma heard soft piano music drifting through the penthouse. Curious, she followed the sound past the formal sitting room into a smaller lounge she hadn't visited before. Vincent sat at the piano, playing something slow and melancholic. His back was to her. The room was dim, lit only by a wall sconce and the glow of the city beyond the windows. She didn't speak, didn't move, just listened. After a moment, he stopped. "You can come in?" Emma stepped forward, unsure of what to say. "I didn't know you played." He stared at the keys. "Not often. Only when I can't sleep." She nodded. It was beautiful. He looked at her, then really looked. "Why did you say yes?" he asked, voice low. Emma hesitated. "Because I didn't have a choice." He gave a tight nod. "Fair enough." "But," she added, "I also believed that somewhere in you, there was more than just a man obsessed with control." He looked away. "I didn't marry you for love," she said quietly. "But I didn't do it for money either. I did it for my father and for myself, to feel like I still had some power left." He was silent. Then he whispered, "Do you hate me for it?" "No," she said after a beat. "But I'm still figuring out how to live inside something that feels so unreal." Vincent closed the piano lid softly. "I don't know how to make it real," he admitted. Emma's voice was barely a breath. "Maybe we start by not pretending we're strangers." That night, she returned to her guest suite and sat at the edge of the bed for a long time. She didn't know what kind of marriage they had, but it wasn't just a contract anymore. Not entirely. Something was shifting, slowly, delicately, and she wasn't sure if it would bloom or break. Emma Prescott didn't believe in omens, but when she spilled coffee on her dress 5 minutes before the charity luncheon at the Metropolitan Club, it felt like a warning. She dabbed at the stain with cold water in the restroom, her fingers trembling slightly. The dress was pale ivory silk, selected by Vincent's stylist just yesterday. Perfectly fitted, delicate, and now flawed. She stared at her reflection in the mirror and forced a breath. Keep it together. She'd made it through nearly a month of pretending to be Vincent Hale's wife. Dozens of events, hundreds of handshakes, thousands of carefully crafted smiles. But she still felt like she was performing in someone else's life. Today wasn't supposed to be different, until it was. The moment she stepped into the grand dining room, she knew something was off. The air felt charged electric with whispers. Eyes flicked toward her, not curious, calculating. Vincent stood near the far end of the room in a tailored navy suit, speaking to a small group. He saw her, gave a small nod, but his eyes didn't linger. And standing next to him, in a crimson wrap dress that clung like silk poured over glass, was a woman Emma had never met but instantly recognized. Victoria Langford. The former fiancée. The one the tabloids once called the only woman who ever got close to Vincent Hale's heart. Emma's stomach tightened. Victoria was stunning tall, blonde, with sharp cheekbones and a smile that knew its power. Her laugh floated above the din like a chime made of crystal. Emma walked toward the group slowly, her heels echoing against marble. Vincent turned slightly as she approached. "Darling," he said smoothly, reaching for her hand. "You remember Victoria Langford?" "Of course," Emma said, offering a polite smile. "It's lovely to finally meet you." Victoria's smile was all teeth. "Isn't it funny how quickly things change?" One minute I'm planning a wedding, and the next, he's married to his secretary. The word hung in the air like smoke. Emma's jaw tightened, but she held her tone steady. I'm sure the timeline feels fast, but love doesn't always wait for permission. Vincent's grip on her hand tightened just slightly. A signal, stay steady. Victoria gave a light laugh, sipping champagne. Well, I've always said Vincent had a surprising streak. Though I must admit, this choice was unexpected. He's full of surprises, Emma replied calmly, and substance. The rest of the luncheon blurred. Emma sat through speeches, clinked glasses, and smiled when expected. But her mind kept drifting back to the way Victoria looked at Vincent and the way Vincent didn't entirely pull away. Back at the penthouse that evening, Emma slipped out of her heels and went straight to the guest suite. She didn't want to talk. She didn't want to think. She wanted space. But a soft knock interrupted her stillness. She opened the door. Vincent stood there, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, a tension in his posture that didn't match his usual composure. I didn't know she'd be there, he said. Emma didn't respond. He exhaled. She just got back from Paris. She wasn't on the guest list. You didn't look surprised. She has a way of appearing when it's inconvenient. Emma crossed her arms. She also has a way of making it clear that she thinks I'm beneath you. Vincent's jaw tightened. You're not. She said it with her eyes. You said it with your silence. His brow furrowed. That's not fair. No, her voice cracked slightly. Because it felt a lot like you forgot I was standing there. He stepped inside. Just a few feet. I didn't forget. I just didn't want to escalate it in public. Emma turned away. You know what hurts the most? Not that she showed up. Not even the way she looked at me like I was temporary. It's that a part of me believes her. Silence. Then Vincent said quietly, You're not temporary, Emma. She turned to face him. Aren't I? We signed a contract. 6 months. And then what his eyes held hers? Then nothing. If that's what we decide. Or something else. Emma blinked. Are you saying he cut her off? I don't know what I'm saying. I just know I see you. I notice you. I admire how you handle things no one else could. And I don't like the way she made you feel. Emma didn't know what to say to that. So she said nothing at all. Over the next few days, Victoria made herself known. She showed up at another event, casually brushed against Vincent during a photo, left behind a business card just in case. Emma said nothing, but she noticed everything. The tension between her and Vincent grew quieter, heavier, like a wire pulled taut between two poles. Until one night, Emma returned to the penthouse late after visiting her father, now recovering slowly, and saw a flicker of movement through the frosted glass of the main room. Voices, laughter. She stepped closer, and there was Vincent standing near the fireplace, glass of wine in hand, and there was Victoria, her hand lightly resting on his chest, laughing softly, too close, too familiar. Emma froze. She didn't speak, didn't interrupt. She turned and walked back down the hall, her chest burning, her eyes stinging. That night, she didn't sleep. And for the first time since signing the contract, she felt like a guest in her own life. Emma Prescott sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the floor. Her heels were still on. Her coat was unbuttoned. Her phone buzzed softly in her purse, but she didn't move to check it. She kept seeing it. Victoria's hand on Vincent's chest. His lack of reaction. His soft laugh that sounded too much like the ones Emma only heard on rare occasions. She had gone out that evening, hoping to clear her head, to give herself space. But space didn't stop the ache from settling in. Something had cracked, and no matter how much she tried to rationalize it, she couldn't unsee what she saw. She was falling in love with a man who didn't seem to know what to do with love, and that more than anything terrified her. The next morning, Emma avoided breakfast. She stayed in her suite, answering emails, organizing her calendar, and keeping her mind busy. When Vincent knocked on her door just after noon, she hesitated before opening it. He stood there, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I figured you hadn't eaten," he said. She took the cup. Thanks. He didn't leave. Instead, he leaned against the wall outside her door, watching her. "You saw us the other night," he said. Emma looked down. "I did, and you didn't say anything." What was there to say? Vincent. That it wasn't what it looked like. She let out a breathless laugh. "It looked like your ex-fiancé touching your chest while you sipped wine together in front of the fireplace. So please tell me how that was innocent." His expression tightened. She showed up, uninvited. "Again." "I told her to leave." "Did you?" Emma challenged. "Because you didn't exactly look like you hated it." He ran a hand through his hair. "You don't know what she means to my family. What she used to mean to me." Emma's voice dropped. "But I know what she makes me feel like. Like I'm nothing but the convenient woman you hired to pose beside you until the real one came back." His jaw clenched. "That's not fair." "No." Her eyes filled, but her voice didn't break. "Because this was never supposed to be fair. Vincent, it was supposed to be business. But somewhere along the way, I started wishing it wasn't." He didn't respond. "I let myself hope," she whispered. "I let myself believe the way you looked at me meant something. But maybe that's just what you do. Look at people the way they want to be seen." He stepped closer. "Emma." She held up a hand. "Don't." A long silence passed between them. Heavy. Final. Then she turned and softly closed the door. That evening, she began packing. She didn't make a scene, didn't slam drawers or call a car service. She folded her clothes into the same bag she brought the first night, the same one she'd clutched like a shield when she entered the penthouse. Maria, the housekeeper, paused at the doorway. "Are you going somewhere, Mrs.?" Hale Emma managed a small smile. "Just for a while." Maria didn't ask more. She just stepped forward and gently hugged her. "You're the first person who ever made this place feel warm." Vincent sat in the study, his phone forgotten beside him. He'd stared at the same line of the acquisition report for over an hour. Nothing registered. When Maria appeared, her voice was soft. "She's leaving." His head snapped up. "What she's packing." He stood too quickly, his chair sliding back, where I didn't ask. "But I think she's trying not to make a scene." He didn't wait. Emma had just zipped her bag when the knock came. She opened the door to find Vincent, breathing harder than usual, eyes unreadable. "You're leaving," he said. "I am." "Where will you go?" "My apartment. My father's doing better. I can go back to my life." He stepped inside. "Is that what you want?" She met his gaze. "What I want is not to love someone who makes me feel invisible when someone else walks into the room. His expression faltered. I never meant to make you feel that way, but you did. Her voice was quiet, steady, and it's not about Victoria. It's about me, about knowing what I'm worth and realizing this arrangement has taken more from me than I expected. He was silent. I need to remember who I was before I stepped into this apartment pretending to be someone I'm not. She picked up her bag and walked past him. Emma, he called. She paused but didn't turn around. Please don't go. She turned her head slightly. Then give me a reason to stay that isn't business. She left. The elevator doors closed with a soft chime, and Vincent stood in the silence she left behind. That night, Emma sat on the floor of her small apartment in Queens, surrounded by quiet. She made tea, called her father to check in, and cried for the first time in months, not because she was angry, but because she had wanted so badly to be chosen, and she wasn't. Vincent stayed in the penthouse, wandering through rooms that now felt colder than ever. He played the piano, but couldn't finish a song. He poured a drink, but didn't take a sip. And when he finally lay down in his bed, his half of the penthouse felt emptier than the whole world. Vincent Hale hadn't stepped foot into his father's old study in years, but that's where he went after Emma left. The room was untouched, polished cherrywood shelves, a dusty chessboard, framed war medals, and the lingering scent of pipe tobacco, even though no one had smoked there in a decade. He sat behind the large desk where his father once signed million-dollar deals and dictated commands like a general. Vincent used to think that power meant never needing anyone. Now, for the first time, he wondered if his father had been just as lonely. 3 days passed. He didn't call Emma. He didn't see her name on the calendar anymore. Didn't hear her soft footsteps echo down the hall. The house was a museum again. Everything pristine, everything hollow. On the fourth night, he opened a drawer in his office and pulled out the wedding contract, the one Emma had signed in trembling hands under fluorescent lights. He turned to the last page, where her name was written with such care, and his signature stood beside it like a stamp of control. He stared at it for a long time. Then he tore it straight down the center. Across the city, Emma sat in her father's kitchen, slowly stirring honey into his tea. "You haven't said much," John Prescott murmured. Emma looked up. Nothing new to say. He took a sip and studied her face. "You didn't just marry that man for me." She sighed. "I did it because we were out of options." He raised an eyebrow. "But you stayed long after my surgery. You stayed because your heart got involved." Her silence was answer enough. "I may be old," he continued gently, "but I know what it's like to love someone who doesn't know how to love back." Emma swallowed hard. "It's not that he doesn't care. I think he just doesn't know how to show it. Maybe he never learned." Her father said, "But that doesn't mean he can't." That night, she heard a knock at the door. It was nearly 10 p.m. When she opened it, Vincent stood there. No suit, no driver, just jeans, a dark sweater, and a face she barely recognized, unguarded, tired, raw. "I shouldn't have come this late," he said, "but I couldn't sleep. And there are things I need to say." Emma stepped aside. He entered slowly, looking around the tiny apartment. "I don't think I've ever seen where you live." "You never asked." He nodded once. "You're right. They sat across from each other at the small kitchen table. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he exhaled. My mother raised me like a show dog, groomed, polished, taught never to show weakness. My father, he didn't raise me at all. Just expected me to inherit the empire and act like it never scared me. Emma listened, hands folded in her lap. I was engaged to Victoria because it made sense. Our families aligned. It was logical. She liked my name, and I liked her presence at functions. But you didn't love her, Emma said softly. I didn't know what love was. I thought it was convenience, applause, mutual benefit. And now, he looked her straight in the eye. Now I know that love feels like silence breaking when you walk into a room, like wanting to become a better man because someone sees who you are underneath the armor. Emma blinked, her throat tightening. I've never met anyone like you, Vincent continued. You're calm when I'm chaos. You bring light into places I didn't know were dark. I didn't hire you to love me. I hired you because I thought I could control the outcome. He paused. But I can't control how I feel anymore. And I don't want to. Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. So what do you want? I want to tear up the contract, which I already did. I want to earn your love this time. No arrangement, no deadline, no rooms divided, just us. If you'll have me. She sat very still, then leaned forward, searching his face. Do you even know how to be in a real relationship? No, he admitted. But I know I want to try with you. Her eyes filled. Then slowly, she reached across the table and took his hand. You don't have to be perfect, she said. You just have to be honest. He squeezed her hand, gently. Then let me start over. Later that night, they stood on the rooftop of her building, overlooking the smaller skyline, wrapped in quiet. No cameras, no contracts, just two people learning how to speak without fear. Emma Prescott hadn't realized how tense she'd been until she heard Vincent laugh. Not the polite, practiced kind he used at board meetings or galas. A real laugh, soft, low, almost surprised by its own existence. They were sitting at a small Italian cafe a block from her apartment, sharing a plate of lemon risotto that neither of them had touched much. It was a quiet weekday afternoon, gray and drizzly, and somehow the rain made everything feel more private. She'd told him a story about her father mixing up sugar and salt in a peach pie when she was 12. It wasn't that funny, but Vincent had laughed anyway, and it made something in her chest relax. I can't believe you know how to eat at a place without linen napkins, she teased gently. He smirked. I'm adaptable. You sure about that? He looked at her, serious again. I'm trying to be. There was an awkward beat, not quite silence, but full of things unspoken. Emma stirred her water glass with the tip of her straw. So, what does this look like now, you and me? No contracts, he said softly. No conditions. I show up. You tell me the truth. We figure it out as we go. She nodded slowly. That sounds scary. It is. They both smiled. Over the next few weeks, they took it one step at a time. Vincent didn't rush to bring her back to the penthouse. Instead, he started coming to her bringing takeout, showing up in sneakers instead of loafers, learning how to sit on a secondhand couch without flinching at the springs. Emma, for her part, kept her expectations small. She watched him, waited, Let him earn every inch of trust, every small laugh, every lingering look. It wasn't perfect. He still checked his phone too much. He still struggled with expressing emotion without sounding like a business memo. But he tried. He listened. He asked questions. And he stayed. One Sunday afternoon, they walked through Central Park, sharing a pretzel and talking about nothing neighbors, dogs, the time Maria burned garlic bread and blamed the oven. Emma caught Vincent staring at her. What? He shrugged. You seem lighter. I feel lighter. She took a breath. Because I'm not afraid right now. Of what of losing myself in someone else? His expression grew thoughtful. I spent so much of my life trying not to feel anything. Emma. Feelings made me slow, vulnerable, weak. She nodded. And now I feel everything when I'm with you. And it's not weakness. It's the only time I feel like I'm not just surviving. The pretzel suddenly felt like a boulder in her hand. You say things like that? She said softly. And I forget why I was ever scared. That night, they sat side by side on her couch, an old movie flickering on the TV. Vincent reached for her hand. Tentative. Emma let him. And for the first time since they'd met, they didn't need roles to be close. 3 days later, Vincent showed up at her door with a single piece of paper. It wasn't another contract. It was a letter, written by hand. He placed it on her kitchen table without a word and waited. Emma picked it up, inside. In his careful, architect-like script, he had written, Emma, I never wanted to be the man who needed someone. But needing you has taught me how to be one. Not because you fixed me, but because you saw me before I even knew I was broken. Let's build something real together. No conditions, no deadlines. Just love. Vincent. She looked up, eyes stinging. He didn't speak, just stepped forward, pulled her gently into his arms, and held her like something fragile but worth everything. That night, they kissed without pretense. No cameras, no ceremony. Just two people who had seen the worst of each other and stayed anyway. The second time, Emma Prescott wore white. It wasn't silk. It was cotton. Soft. Simple. And a little wrinkled from where she'd sat nervously on the park bench, waiting for the ceremony to begin. There was no orchestra, no designer heels, no photographers hiding in the hedges. Just a garden in early bloom, a handful of chairs, and the scent of lilac carried on a spring breeze. Vincent Hale stood at the other end of the path, wearing a navy blue suit, no tie, no pocket square, no public face, just him. When Emma's father, John, offered his arm, she smiled and took it. You sure about this, sweetheart? He whispered as they walked. I've never been surer of anything, she replied, her voice steady. When they reached the arbor, where Vincent waited, John gave her hand one last squeeze before stepping back. Emma looked up at Vincent and smiled. No audience, no contract, only them. The officiant cleared her throat gently. Vincent, Emma, today you've chosen to speak new vows, not out of necessity, but from love. Vincent turned to face her fully. I used to think control kept me safe, he said. That love was something people made up to feel less alone. Then you showed me it wasn't about being safe. It was about being seen, and I have never felt more real than I do with you. So today, I promise not just to love you, but to keep showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Emma blinked back tears. Then it was her turn. When I first married you, she began. I was scared, not of you, but of losing myself. I didn't know how to love someone like you, or how to be loved in return. But then you started listening, trying, becoming. And I realized I wasn't losing myself. I was becoming more of who I really was. With you. Vincent reached for her hands, his thumbs brushing lightly over her fingers. I don't need diamonds or cameras, Emma continued. I just need someone who chooses me when no one's watching. And you do. So I promise to keep choosing you back. The officiant smiled gently. You may seal your vows. Vincent leaned in, slow and unhurried. And when their lips met, it wasn't fire. It was light, warm, healing, steady. Afterward, they sat at a small table under a tree, sipping sparkling cider and laughing with a handful of guests who had seen it all. Maria, in a floral dress she insisted was too loud, John with his oxygen cane and teary eyes, and a few close friends who had always believed in the two of them, even before they believed in themselves. No tabloids, no staged photos, just real smiles and stories passed across a table filled with home-cooked food and paper napkins. Emma rested her chin on her hand, watching Vincent tell her father a story about his terrible college roommate. He laughed easily now, like a man who wasn't afraid of his own joy. She reached for his hand under the table. He found it without looking. That night, in the quiet of their shared apartment, not the penthouse, not the contract suite, but the small space they now called theirs, they lay side by side, the hum of the city, their lullaby. Vincent brushed her hair back from her face. Thank you for giving me another chance. Emma turned toward him. Thank you for becoming the man I always knew you could be. He smiled softly. You know we could have done this at the Met, with 600 guests and a 10-tier cake. She snorted. And we could have missed everything real between us. Fair enough. A pause. Then he whispered, I love you. It was the first time he'd said it out loud. She didn't cry. She smiled and said, I love you too. In the dark, their fingers stayed intertwined. No need for vows written in ink anymore. They had written them in the quiet, in the leaving, in the coming back, and now in the staying. The apartment was quiet, not because something was missing, but because everything finally felt whole. Emma Prescott leaned against the windowsill of their modest kitchen, watching early morning lights spill over the tops of brownstone rooftops. The hum of traffic below, the aroma of brewing coffee, the rustle of the newspaper, each a note in the song of her new life. Behind her, Vincent Hale stood barefoot, shirt sleeves rolled up, fumbling with the toaster. How is it possible, she said over her shoulder, that you can handle 9-figure mergers but not bagels? He turned, mock offended. You overestimate the complexity of mergers. Bagels are trickier. She laughed, and he smiled, not because he was trying to charm her, but because her laugh had become the only sound that truly calmed him. They had been married truly. Married for 6 months now. No press release. No flashbulbs. No scripted story. Just two people who woke up beside each other each morning, choosing again and again to be part of the same story. And it was in the smallest things, the way Vincent reached for her hand at red lights, the way Emma waited for him with a warm plate when he got home late, the way they navigated quiet disagreements with honesty that their love built something lasting. There were no grand declarations anymore, only presence, only peace. One evening in early autumn, as yellow leaves collected in corners of the city, they visited John Prescott. He was healthier now, walking short distances, tending to his garden, recounting old army stories with more flair than accuracy. As they sat on his porch, Vincent poured tea while Emma helped adjust her father's chair cushion. "You seem different," John said to Vincent, watching him closely. "I am," Vincent answered without hesitation. "And what changed you?" Vincent looked at Emma, then back at John. "Being loved by someone who doesn't want to own me, just know me." John smiled. "That's the good kind." Later that night, Vincent and Emma walked home in silence, hands intertwined. When they reached their building, he paused on the front steps. "I've been thinking," he said. "Dangerous," she teased. He nudged her shoulder gently. "We should turn the guest room into a studio. You said you missed painting." Emma blinked. "You remembered that I remember everything about you," he said, "especially the parts you think I don't see." She didn't reply right away. Instead, she slipped her arms around him and rested her head on his chest. "Let's build a life that remembers everything," she whispered. The next morning, she stood by the window again. The same light, the same hum of the city. But now, on the table beside her, sat a small framed photo. It was them, laughing under the arbor where they'd renewed their vows. Maria had taken it, capturing not the kiss, not the pose, but the moment after, when their eyes had met, and neither had needed to say anything. Love, Emma thought, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, gentle, earned. Sometimes it's not about being swept off your feet, but about someone choosing to stand beside you when the ground gets rough. She turned back toward the kitchen. Vincent stood there, hair messy, coffee in one hand, reading the newspaper upside down. He looked up. "What?" "Nothing," she said, walking toward him with a soft smile. "I just love our life," he grinned, wrapping an arm around her waist. "I do too." And somewhere, between the silence and the laughter, between the contracts and the kisses, between the risk and the return, they had built something real, not a fairy tale, not perfection, just love the kind that stays. Sometimes, love doesn't arrive with fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes, it begins in silence, in necessity, in unlikely places, and grows through quiet choices. This story reminds us that real love isn't about perfection or timing. It's about showing up when it's hard, listening when you don't know what to say, and choosing someone again and again, even after the masks come off. Emma and Vincent didn't fall in love the right way. They started with duty, control, and fear. But as their walls slowly fell, they discovered something rare, a love rooted not in fantasy, but in truth. And that's a powerful lesson for all of us, especially those of us who have lived long enough to know that life is rarely neat. We don't always get a second chance. But when we do, it's worth choosing healing over pride, presence over performance, and love not as a perfect ending, but as a daily, deliberate act. Because in the end, it's not how the story started that matters. It's what we're brave enough to build with what we're given. Thank you for spending your time with us today. If this story touched your heart, made you feel seen, or reminded you of your own journey, please consider supporting our channel. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt stories. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. See you in the next one.